You might think you know the story of Rani Lakshmibai, the Queen of Jhansi. But what if I told you that popular tales barely scratch the surface? We often hear about her legendary last stand, but what about the political mastermind, the brilliant tactician who outmaneuvered the British Empire long before the final battle? Today, we are peeling back the layers of legend to reveal the real Lakshmibai, India's firebrand warrior queen. This isn't just a story of bravery. It's a masterclass in rebellion, strategy, and leadership against impossible odds. Let's rewind to the 1850s. The British East India Company is swallowing Indian kingdoms whole, using a cunning policy called the Doctrine of Lapse. This doctrine stated that if a ruler died without a natural male heir, their kingdom would be annexed by the British. For Lakshmibai, this was more than a political threat, it was a personal one. When her husband, the Maharaja of Jhansi, passed away, the British refused to recognize their adopted son, Damodar Rao, as the heir. They saw Jhansi as another prize to be claimed, but they hadn't counted on the queen. Most rulers in her position would have accepted a pension and retired quietly. Not Lakshmibai. From the moment the British declared their intent to annex Jhansi, she began a relentless campaign of diplomatic resistance. She wrote countless letters and appeals, not just to local British officials, but all the way to the Governor-General in Calcutta and even to the authorities in London. Her arguments were brilliant, citing Hindu law and treaties the British themselves had signed. She wasn't just a grieving widow, she was a shrewd legalist, using the enemy's own system against them. This wasn't a fight with swords yet, it was a battle of wits and ink, and Lakshmibai proved she was a formidable opponent in the courtroom as well as on the battlefield. While her diplomatic efforts were underway, she was also preparing for the inevitable. Lakshmibai didn't just sit and wait. She began to quietly and methodically fortify Jhansi. She started a cannon foundry inside the fort, manufacturing her own ammunition. She didn't just rely on the existing army. She built a new one. And this is where her genius truly shines. She recruited and trained men and women from all castes and classes, creating a people's army. Her elite corps of female bodyguards and soldiers was unheard of at the time. She understood that a true rebellion needed the full support of the people. This wasn't just about defending a throne. It was about defending their home, their dignity, and their future. She was turning Jhansi into an impenetrable fortress, not just of stone, but of will. Then, in May 1857, the spark of rebellion ignited across North India. The Great Revolt had begun. While many associate Lakshmibai with the rebellion from the start, her initial entry was more complex. Seeing the chaos, she offered to govern Jhansi on behalf of the British to maintain order, a clever political move to show she was a responsible leader. But the British, blinded by their own arrogance, saw her only as a rebel. When their forces, led by the ruthless General Hugh Rose, marched on Jhansi in March 1858, they expected a quick victory. They were in for a shock. The siege of Jhansi was not a simple affair. For nearly 2 weeks, Lakshmibai's small, determined army held off a massive, well-equipped British force. This is where we see her military brilliance firsthand. She was constantly on the move, inspecting defenses, directing cannon fire, and rallying her troops. Eyewitness accounts describe her on the ramparts, a sword in her hand, her presence electrifying the defenders. She used every tactical advantage her fortress offered, turning the city into a death trap for the invaders. The British were stunned by the ferocity of the resistance. The weak queen they had underestimated was now their most formidable adversary. But even the bravest defenders can't hold out forever. The British eventually breached the walls, and the fighting spilled into the streets. It was a brutal house-to-house struggle. Yet even with the city falling, Lakshmibai didn't surrender. In a move of sheer audacity, she executed one of the most daring escapes in military history. With her young son Damodar Rao strapped to her back, she and a small band of loyal guards mounted their horses. Under the cover of darkness, they charged through the enemy lines, leaping from the high walls of the fort and galloping into the night. It was an act of defiance, so bold, it became instant legend. Her escape wasn't a retreat. It was a strategic regrouping. Lakshmibai didn't run to hide. She rode to Kalpi, a major center for the rebels, to join forces with other key leaders like Tancha Tope and Rao Sahib. Here, her role transformed. She was no longer just the Queen of Jhansi. She was now a central commander in the wider rebellion. Her strategic advice and battlefield experience were invaluable. She argued for aggressive tactics, for taking the fight to the British instead of waiting to be attacked. She advocated for a united front, urging the fragmented rebel groups to coordinate their efforts. Her vision was bigger than just reclaiming her own kingdom. It was about driving the British out of India entirely. This leads us to one of her most brilliant and lesser-known victories, the capture of Gwalior. The fortress of Gwalior was considered one of the most powerful in all of India, and it was held by the Scindias who were allied with the British. Capturing it seemed impossible, but Lakshmibai saw an opportunity. She convinced the other rebel leaders that taking Gwalior would not only give them a strategic stronghold but also access to its vast treasury and a fresh army. In a stunningly swift campaign, the rebel forces marched on Gwalior, the Scindia's army, inspired by the presence of the legendary Rani and swayed by the cause of independence, defected without a major fight. The rebels took the fort, and Lakshmibai had, in one masterful stroke, secured a new base of operations and reignited the rebellion. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn. From Gwalior, the rebels could threaten the British from a position of immense strength. But the British, now seeing the true danger Lakshmibai posed, regrouped and advanced on Gwalior with overwhelming force. This set the stage for the final battles. In the plains outside the city, Lakshmibai, dressed as a cavalry leader, fought alongside her soldiers. She was not a queen directing from the rear. She was a soldier leading from the front. On June 17, 1858, during a fierce battle at Kota Kisarai, she led a cavalry charge to halt the British advance. In the heat of the fight, she was gravely wounded. Her loyal followers carried her from the battlefield, and understanding that the British must not capture her body, they quickly built a funeral pyre. She passed away, a warrior to the very end. The fire of the rebellion in North India was soon extinguished, but the flames she had lit in the hearts of her people would never die. Even her enemies couldn't help but acknowledge her greatness. General Hugh Rose, the man who had pursued her relentlessly, later wrote that the Rani was the most dangerous of all the rebel leaders. He described her as personable, clever, and beautiful, a rare tribute from a Victorian general to his Indian adversary. Rani Lakshmibai's story is so much more than a tale of a tragic last stand. She was a political chess player who used law and diplomacy as weapons. She was an innovator who built a people's army. She was a master strategist who outthought her enemies, and a courageous leader who inspired thousands to fight for freedom. She showed that leadership isn't about gender or title. It's about courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable spirit. The firebrand Queen of Jhansi wasn't just fighting for her kingdom. She was forging the very idea of a free India. Thank you so much for joining us on this deeper dive into the life of Rani Lakshmibai. If you found this story as inspiring as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments what other historical figures you'd like us to explore. Until next time, stay curious.